You're listening to the Sensuality Project podcast, where the messiness of real life gets sexy, hosted by Stacey Herrera. This podcast is intended for mature audiences only. Episodes contain profane language and topics of a sexual nature that may not be suitable for children. Listener discretion is strongly advised. Welcome to another episode of the Sensuality Project podcast. I am your host, Stacey Herrera. Thank you so much for joining me again. I am really excited about my conversation today because today I'm chatting with Myola Woods, and she is a sexological body worker, a somatic sex educator. Mostly she's amazing. She's amazing. She does really beautiful, deep work around helping people to really connect and ground in their bodies and release trauma and just unleash pleasure, basically. Like, she's a pleasure unleasher. I love everything that she stands for. This conversation was so juicy, and she actually helped me to move through some stuff while we were actually on the call, so you'll get to witness that. I just really love speaking with people that are grounded and committed to helping everyone evolve as they evolve. And Myola is one of those people. She's just extraordinary. And she was referred to me by my dear friend, Caitlin Grace, because Caitlin knows good people. So anyways, I think you're going to really enjoy this chat. It is expansive and insightful. And there's just so many great nuggets. I enjoyed being with the experience, but I also really enjoyed having an opportunity to listen to it from the perspective of a listener, because I got a lot out of it the second time that I didn't get when I was participating. You know how it is. Anyways, it's amazing. She's amazing. You're going to love it. So I'm going to stop talking now so that you can listen up. All right. So first, I'm going to start off with a question. I'm going to give you 3 descriptors, and then you tell me what you think the thing is.
Oh, okay. I'm terrible at these things. Do I have to get it right?
I'm terrible at it too, so don't worry.
Just play.
Yes.
That's okay. I can play. It's okay.
Okay. Look, I thought you'd get a kick out of this one. Okay. I'm covered with dense growth. I'm hot, moist, and dark inside. And it's dangerous to be inside of me without protection. What am I?
Ooh, it's too obvious to be a vulva or a vagina or a yoni. It's too obvious.
That's where my mind goes immediately.
So maybe it's an ear or a somewhere else. That's a
good guess, though. It's actually the jungle.
Oh, it is the jungle. Okay. Yes, and I guess the question could be, why does the jungle remind us of a vulva or a...
Right? Yes, because there can definitely be dense growth, and it is dark and moist inside.
And sometimes it is dangerous to be there with no protection.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Mm-hmm. That was great. Okay, so I'm thinking about your work. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking about like my own body experience at the same time. Mm-hmm. So like one of the things that I'm currently in the space of navigating, and I don't know if I'm doing it successfully or not, is I am trying to navigate the space of needing without being needy.
Uh-huh.
So I'm sure as a woman, and probably with the women that you've worked with, that this is a pretty familiar terrain. So where does that tend to show up in the body? Is there like a place that it's kind of common?
I don't know. Normally, I try not to put. I mean, sometimes there are general things, but when I work with women, I kind of ask them. I find that we've been told things our whole lives. And we've been told that our bodies do this, or they don't do this, or they're no good, or they're terrible. And so I try to give that back to people, so where do you notice the neediness in your body? Mm-hmm. And so they build the skills to go into their body and listen and go, okay, well, I feel the neediness in my belly and in my, or I feel in my, and it comes down to my womb. And usually I ask some questions around, well, and I mean, I'm happy for you if you wish to do this as well. I could ask you, where do you feel your neediness in your body?
Look, just you saying that, I felt the constriction.
Yes.
Like I immediately felt the constriction. You know where it's been sitting in my hips, particularly in my lower back. Now, fear normally shows up for me in my right flank, typically around my kidney.
Mm-hmm.
But this is different. Mm-hmm. This feels really different. So it started, I was having an emotional surge around a particular issue a couple of days ago. And I felt it like in my lower back really intensely. And so I did some womb meditation and some hip openers. And then I actually went with one of my friends is an EFT practitioner. And so she walked me through some things and I released some. And then there was like this vulva massage yesterday that released a lot because there was a lot of stored tension like in the left wall of my vulva, well, my vagina, really tight there. And so I released a lot. Incidentally, today I woke up feeling intense like discomfort in my lower back and also with inflammation on the left side of my vulva. So I know that it's that thing that I've really been inviting it to the surface. So I feel like it's on its way out. But I don't know. This is the first time I've ever had awareness or language around me trying to express needing and feeling conflicted about this story about not wanting to come off as needy. I'm not saying I never felt it before. I just never had the awareness or gave it language. So definitely in I'm like, yeah, my emotion in the hip. So it makes sense to me that it's there. And the fact that it's in my lower back just gives me a sense that it's about needing support and struggling to be expressive about the kind of support that I need.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the parts I would look at is what is wrong with being needy?
There's a story. There's definitely a story. I think I know it's a childhood story of me feeling like I needed to be grossly independent and not needing to be coddled or cared for. And that, I think, came from me misinterpreting my mother's way of being affectionate. So I think that it's just been this story that I can take care of myself. And one of my favorite ways to language my suppression of neediness is by saying, I don't need you to manage my feelings. It's bullshit though. Yeah, it's total bullshit.
So, and one of the ways you might like to explore, and I mean, I resonate totally with the independent person, and I grew up an only child, and so yes, and our family didn't ask for help, so I totally resonate with you. But one of the places to play with might be, how would my needy self show up? What would I look like? What would I be wearing? What would I be saying if I was? And what does that, embodying that totally, what would happen if I totally embodied 110% that needy part of me? I
cry all the time anyway, but I would definitely be, but it would be like sobbing. It wouldn't be like, it would be almost me when I even just you saying it, like I could see me in a heap, like literally on the floor. Like I could see me just being just in a heap, allowing myself to dense, I guess, like it would be dense and heavy because I would need to be on the floor to feel it just because of the dense energy that's there. And I would be wearing black, like almost like I'm mourning this thing. Like interesting though, because like, yes, in a 24-hour period, I literally went through all the stages of grief. Like I was just like, I've done all of the grief. Like, I am angry and in denial and anger. And, I'm now bargaining. Like, if I do this, I will give that, and then, then being depressed about it. And then like, okay, I accept where I am. Oh my goodness.
And that might be a heap on the floor in black.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just to feel it, just to know that. in your body, in your cells, instead of trying to, keep it down or not acknowledging it, or it's. And
Yes.
neediness is a big issue, I think, particularly for women. I think we all, and then we have the conflicting. What's the trendy word currently? Cognitive dissonance.
Yes.
Where we obviously we're mammals and we're community beings and we love touch and we love to be needed and be in a community. And then, but the society tells us you need to be independent, you need to be look after this, you need to do yourself, and you're okay if you're on your own and did it. So we have these two conflicting parts of us that just, is possible to drive us crazy, probably.
Oh yeah.
And not be clear. Like we could be, nearly like, having two personalities.
That's exactly what it feels like. That's exactly what it feels like. Like, trying to be self-contained. And then, but then lying about being able to be interpersonal.
I'm good at interpersonal as long as I'm independent and you're over there.
Yep.
Right?
That's so me. Look, you just summed me up in one sentence. That is so me. Someone just said to me, like, you never act like you need anybody. You never act like you need anybody. Like, people don't really know how to be with you because they don't even think that there's anything that they have to offer you. And I was like, really? Because I do need things. Look, how does anybody know that though? Like,
yeah, I suppose so. So what's the part of you that likes to think that nobody has anything for you?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say, immediately, like the first image I see myself in, I think I must have been 6th grade based on the outfit that I'm wearing. And I could see myself like being like solo on the playground. And I was wearing this god awful, like beige corduroy, like pantsuit it had like a long vest. And but I see myself like being alone on the playground. Which I usually would have like one friend that I was close to at any period. It was always just one friend. So she must have been absent that day. And I was by myself. And it was just kind of like, me being solo. So I don't know if the story is that I'm okay by myself, which I love my own company a great deal. And I'm not an only child. I'm in the middle of a sister sandwich. So I do really well solo. And enjoy and invite time apart from people. And I think that I've never really mastered allowing people in my space. But when I do, it's for limited time engagement. Like, don't like grow roots or try to move in and shit. Like,
well, I know for myself, I have 4 children. And this year we had some things go on, and so I don't live with them. And so it's the first time in 43 years I've lived by myself. So that took a little bit of adjusting to get to that, I mean, not that I'm not okay with my own company, but I went from a big house of 6 people with lots of noise to there's me and me and me. Okay.
How jarring was that?
It was a little bit funny at first, and a little bit, what am I going to do with all this sort of time, I suppose? And, I know what I did. I wrote a book and I've written and I've produced a whole bunch of programs and I've, worked with, and then when I'm with them. There's nothing else, and it's hectic, when they're here, it's just, when we're together, it's hectic. But it was a change in my sense of me. Who am I without that? Who am I without my children and being the mother and being that? Who am I? I'm still that, of course, but what else have I got? And where are my relationships, and where am I with people? How does that change in time and space? And there are some things, who looks after the spiders when you're all by yourself? Very important questions.
Very, because that would be one of my first questions, really.
And I'm so lucky that my neighbour puts the garbage bin out for me. So I have found a way to love it, and I have found a way to really appreciate my own space and time again, and then appreciating and just being able to be with the hecticness and the craziness of when everyone is here when we're all together. So changing that. But I had to realise that this is the first time in over 40 years I've lived by myself, lived without someone. And one of the things I really noticed was things were there if I had done the dishes. So that indicates that I don't always do the dishes, but if I'd done the dishes, they were done, and no one had been back to create. No one had left the breadboard, the sandwiches, the Nutella, they hadn't been. I hadn't gone away and come back to. It was exactly the way I left it. And I think that was part of there was a part of healing in that.
Yeah.
As well. That things are the way I left it, and there's no one coming to change it. It was an interesting time.
Oh, well, that segues into a great question about identity. Like, what are the identities that you've been wearing that now, because I'm 44, so we're in the same space. But but I'm recognizing in me the identities that I've been wearing. One of them has been this independent identity. So the identities that I've been wearing that have now begun to expire. Have you recognized some of those? I mean, outside of that, like, have you recognized some of those in you that you're like, okay, this served for whatever, and now it just doesn't work anymore?
I don't know about work anymore, but in the process of being by myself and bringing my book together, I've had different pieces of my life. So I've been an educator. I've been a straight educator. I've been a sex educator. I've done psychic development, spiritual development. So I've been people's, I don't necessarily want to use the word guru, but I've been that kind of inspiration for people. And I do body work and massage, so I know people's bodies very well. So, and different people know me in different spaces, and they don't necessarily know me as the same. And then obviously, they have the school mums and the school, all of that parent, mother part that comes out. And so in that process, possibly being by myself, I feel like I brought all of me together. So I wasn't not just the word just, but I wasn't just the mother or just the educator or just the psychic spiritual person or the bodywork person. I kind of brought all of those together more holistically, that I now, when I speak to people, feel like I'm speaking from my wholeness and not segregating to, well, how do you know me? What answer do I give you? Yeah.
That's beautiful. That is so beautiful. I mean, I recognize when I am connecting from my wholeness as opposed to my not enoughness, because I've done a lot of not enough connecting, like probably maybe 35 of the 44 years, maybe more. Now I definitely recognize when I'm embodying my wholeness and the difference in the caliber of relationship that I attract, even in business and in the grocery store, the level of relationship and the way that I relate is really different when I am standing and rooted in my wholeness as opposed to when I am operating from the space of not enough, or which I tend to operate more from the perspective of someone else thinking I'm too much as opposed to not enough. So my muchness. So like, but being in the space, look, I'm feeling that for you. that feeling like you are no longer fragmented.
Yes. And of course I didn't know I was fragmented when I was fragmented.
Right.
Because we don't know these things when we're doing them. But I noticed the difference when and my articulation of things is really different, because it's like my brain has been brought together, and it's like someone brought the puzzle together in my brain and in my body. So it feels different. So
wow, that's expansive.
Yeah.
That is really, really expansive. So what is your biggest challenge living in your body? Like knowing what you know, like, knowing like all the work that you do for others and all the knowledge that you've acquired in practice and in theory and all that stuff. Like what's the thing that you still like, even though what's one of the things that's still a challenge for you?
I think it's, for some things, I'm mostly okay. The things that still glitch me, I'm a big woman, and I talk about sex, So there is a lot of, I feel lots of, judgments that come towards me, and lots of people kind of look and go, yeah, what is she doing? What is she saying? Why is she, where did she get the right to do that? Where did that? And so I still, if there was one area that my physicalness still would, if there was a a kink in the armor or an Achilles heel, that would be the first one that would pop up for me. And I'm mostly embodied, and I'm mostly, I'm like everyone else in the sense of I need reminded that following the pleasure is joyful.
Yes.
And if I'm in my head, orgasms don't work either. Like I'm a human being like everyone else in the sense of if I'm trying to be orgasmic or trying to do something, as Yoda says, do or don't do, don't try.
Right. Well, so as a fellow big woman, I get it. I do. Yeah. Do you have a skinny past?
I have pictures of skinny. I have things. Yeah. I have 4 children, so I have a variety of levels of my body.
Yeah. Yeah, and I only ask because I don't have a skinny past at all. Like I was my mother's largest baby, and I was chunky as a child, and then I became. I actually right now I have one daughter. She's 22. I gained only 11 pounds during pregnancy, so I didn't but while I was pregnant, I was sick the whole time. And my doctor was concerned that I was trying not to gain weight because I was already big. So he threatened to, put me on a diet plan. And I was like, I'm eating. First of all, the only craving I had was salad. And I threw it up all the time. So I wasn't trying not to gain weight. But that was what he thought was happening, which I thought now that I'm that was so curious to me. But currently at this age, I'm the exact same weight that I was 22 years ago when I gave birth to my daughter. So I have gained some weight, not a lot. But I find it so useful that I don't have a skinny past because there's no used to be me that I'm always aspiring to be, which is something I see a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah, the stories in my head or in people's heads. And the part for me is we just don't see diversity. We from society, the beliefs we have little pictures.
Yep.
And this is how things look. Not only diversity in how people look in our in bodies, and it wasn't really until I got involved with the queer community that I started to see diversity. Even in my own, sexuality work, I still stood out. I still stand out. But in the queer, so I didn't get exposure to lots of diversity until I started being in the queer community and feeling it more at home. So,
well, there's something so accepting. If there was ever a community that really embodies what it means to come as you are, it's the queer community. I mean, yes. We have been conditioned, we've got these little pictures, and then we also have this hetero monogamous, dialogue that everyone keeps trying to fit and box themselves in. And while at the same time saying everyone's welcome, but it's not, we aren't living that truth, not at all. But the queer community is very accepting of all the colors, all the shapes, all the sizes, all the identities in terms of gender and sexuality, everything is truly welcome.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think we see enough of that. And so when I'm looking for pictures, I often use myself because not necessarily because I want to, but I haven't got any. And the ones that I find on the internet are mostly terrible, I find. I think that we could do with some more diversity and sexiness is, how I feel. And
right.
I suppose what makes me so excited about working with people is, I'm not a Tinkerbell, and I have learnt to have so much fun with my body. And I really love my body. It's not, it may not look like a magazine, but I have fun and I really like it. And I like its softness, and I enjoy playing with it all the time. And that's something that, I mean, I've always enjoyed playing with it. I've got big boobs and I, enjoy them as much as anyone else. And I just find that we get stuck on, we have to look a certain way before we can have pleasure, before we can have enjoyment, before we can, whereas I've actually, and I suppose the advantage of being bigger, or for me, is I've had to love that, and I've had to go to things because I wanted to go and not let the story or what I thought the story might be from other people hold me back in life or in, and I'm going to wear a dress and I'm going to probably wear a tight dress. And if you don't like it, then that's not my business, really.
Exactly. Well, and, of course, sex as a big woman is delicious. I mean, I do not know, but I imagine it must be delicious as a not big woman too. I don't even want to say small woman, but a not big woman, whatever that means. But like, sex is one of my favorite parts of being a human. I love like the feeling and the sensation. I mean, amongst other things, that because it isn't even necessarily always intercourse. Like, I've had extremely sexual experiences, eating a fucking apple when I'm fully present for it. When I'm like, oh my God, this is so juicy. And I'm biting it and the juice is running down the side of my hand and the crunch and, the texture, like all of those things are exactly the same sensations that you bring into your sexual experience if you're in the room.
Yes.
If you're in the room.
Yes. It's not about the size of the body or the apple, or it's about being here and being present and being embodied in the body, because that's where the sensations come from. That's where the pleasure comes from. That's where the moments come from. It's being here now.
Absolutely. Yeah. So how do you feel about, because one of the things where like the body and sexuality and spirituality, there is often a divide that we have created in separating the body from the spirit and, making the body other when it comes to spirituality. And that is bizarre to me because I do not know another way to experience spirit without the body in this human form. So what do you feel about like the sexual, sensual spirituality connection?
Yeah, I have lots of thoughts. So my background is spirituality and psychic development, and I always had an interest in. As a child, I always knew more than I was supposed to, and it got me in lots of trouble, really. And I was always interested in how sexual energy. I always was fascinated with Kundalini and sexual energy and how it looked and how it felt and what it did in the body and what happened when it was constricted or when it was expanded and why it constricted. And I have a traumatic background, so I mostly, I suppose my interest was for me in the beginning, and then for others, how does this work? And I do in the past have done, I still probably do, but not consciously, sacred work with the land, so sacred healing, sacred openings, those sorts of things. And I would have orgasms. I didn't know this at the time. I just knew that I was having full body orgasmic experiences with the earth, with God, with the cosmos, with the universe. And I would shake on the ground.
Wow.
But I wasn't necessarily having that with a physical partner. And I realized there's a disconnect here. I'm missing something. Something's not quite right. If I can have these ecstatic experiences, with God, and not that, they're obviously wonderful. But there was a point where I realized I'm a human being and I have a body, and here is where we change things. In the body is how we change when we're bringing when we're bringing that spiritual matter into our bodies, we're actually changing, we're spiritualizing matter, we're changing the physicalness, we're changing the embodiment, we're changing. For me, that is why we're here as humans, why we're here on the planet, is to create heaven on earth. So in my journey of that, I realized that there was something amiss. So I then went on a physical, how was I going to be? And it was for me, it was a fear of intimacy with people and a fear of getting close and a fear of, it's still much easier for me to be connected with spirit than it is, often with people. So I have to remind myself that I am here and there is people and I need to connect with them. And so I learned how to, move through my own intimacy issues, my own connection issues, my own embodiment, and really bring that into, I can still have orgasmic experiences with God and the universe, but now I get to have them physically with people as well, with humans, with other humans, and have that soul to soul connection physically in a body. And so my total orgasmic experience as a human has totally shifted.
Wow, that gave me soul pimples. Like I definitely I understand the challenge of connecting intimately. And how, I get all of it. Like I feel that when I am near the water, particularly, that's always been like a grounding thing for me, is like being near the water. I don't even have to be in it. I could just be by it, and I could feel full, and completely nourished in a way that I found challenging to be with other people. Yeah, like, to be human, it's we're so complex and messy. I mean, and that's also one of the best parts of being human. But the discomfort is challenging. Someone earlier today had sent me something that said, and I'm probably going to mess up the quote really badly, but it was something like being aware, like, how does it feel, or if we can get to a place of recognizing that there can be balance outside of polarity. And and I sat with it for a minute, and then I was like, or we could not or we could not focus on it. And because I think, like, sometimes the whole idea of balance is enough to keep you on the hamster wheel of never really being, trying to make things even out. And I have rarely had the experience of that. And so I just don't focus on that. I'm also a Libra. So, but
so just totally move away from balance, just totally move away from them.
Yeah. But I mean, and, because I was like, I don't know how much of the idea of balance is just that, an idea, as opposed to something that, and even when it happens, it seems very short-lived. It's very transitional, very impermanent. I mean, just as everything is.
Yes. And I think that enjoying the seasons, everything has a seasons, everything has a cycle. When I talk about pleasure, we do some pleasure mapping with clients, and I talk about, it has a cycle. It's like a wave, and it comes up and it goes down, and it goes up and it comes down. You can't, if you touch the same spot for 10 minutes doing the same thing, you are going to find a point where it goes from being totally awesome to being yes. Can we stop that now?
Yeah.
And the other way, if sometimes we find some boring parts, and if we stay with those for a little while, sometimes they become, so it's a matter of following what is happening in the body rather than, and I hear stories with women, particularly with orgasms, that, it was just nearly there, and it was just nearly there, and then it just disappeared. I'm like, because you have to kind of keep following it, and keep going with it, or helping it, like one or the other. You either need to go into it and kind of really have it, or you need to kind of go with it. What's the next move, and what else is going to add to this? It's not, and being in your head having that conversation is tiring for one thing, but also you're not in your body following.
Completely. You leave the room.
Yes.
Yeah, but then the other thing that I found for myself, and with people I've had conversations with, and with people I've actually witnessed, is the minute we get in our head, we stop breathing. We stop breathing, and now you're holding your breath, and now, of course, the orgasm has run away because you kicked it out. Like,
yes, like you threw a bucket of water over it. Yes. Yes.
Absolutely. So how did you decide how did you get into, like, somatics and all of the things, like, how, and sex work, sex education? Sex work is a different thing.
Sex is
different thing.
Okay.
Sex education. How did you decide to go
education. the two parts of my life that have always stuck have sort of been bodywork and education. And people would come and see me, and even though, I mean, my short answer would be, it just lights me up like a Christmas tree.
Mm-hmm.
That would be my short answer. And so, but before I knew that, people would come and see me, and they would come and see me about a shoulder or their toe, and somewhere in there would be intimacy issues. And so I just thought, there's more of this that needs to, and I didn't necessarily have the skills. I had some skills. And so I developed my own skills, and I've always really had an interest in pregnancy and women. And when I first started to do, yoni mapping and work with the vulva internally, because, my background is massage. So my teacher said, you don't even put your fingers inside somebody's toe, like inside the toes, in between the toes, because, that's like touching their genitals. Mm-hmm. So now he would probably be very, very afraid, not only, maybe I still maybe don't put my fingers in people's toes, but, now I do touch people's genitals. And there was a time when I thought, how do I not know the benefit of this, and how do I tell people that massaging your shoulder is awesome, and you probably got some emotions in your shoulder? How did I even believe, because I think I'm an educated person, I think I'm quite, open to different ideas. How did I still not know that my pelvis was going, my pelvic floor, my genitals, my reproductive organs were going to store things? Like, how did I not know that? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And there was a part of me that I went through a little bit of grief around feeling let down by society, that I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. And that I had believed something that was untrue, was just that we have this thing about genitals, and we just decide we don't touch them, we don't talk about them, and let's not go there. Mm-hmm. And I suppose in my own journey, I realised that I, was very helpful to work with, women after they'd had scar tissue, and my own scar tissue after giving birth, and noticed the difference that it made. There was a certain position that was a bit uncomfortable, and I did some work around the scar tissue, and then it wasn't uncomfortable. So, I suppose as we go along, I use myself as a guinea pig, mm-hmm. and then I take it out into the world and show people and talk to people, and it doesn't. People often say to me, "Oh, you are brave, or you're courageous," or I don't actually feel those things. Mm-hmm. It feels to me that something that comes from my soul, or I feel like I'm talking about everyday things. I don't necessarily, I know I'm not, like, mm-hmm. I have that awareness, but it feels like it could be. It feels like there could be a space where this is a natural way to talk, and a natural way to have a discussion with our friends and our family and our colleagues, that it's not so taboo and not so, because we don't know. Right. We don't know that someone else is going through the same thing as us, because we don't talk about it.
Yes. I think that one of the things that I didn't know when I gave birth, I didn't have the relationship with my body that I have now. I was 20, almost 22. I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything. And I don't remember anyone ever asking me if I wanted an episiotomy. No one asked. And now I know there could have been massage there, and I would not have needed to have that. But now I'm still grateful that there is still sensation there, because it could have been severed. Yep. And consequently, though, I have, when they stitched it, it kind of has a pucker.
Yes.
And one of the things that I recognized with a partner that my feelings had changed for this person. And whenever I would be sexual with that particular person, that part of my vulva would rip. And and it never happened with anyone else, but it would always tear, and it would be really uncomfortable. And consequently, when I would get ready there was resentment, which is what was creating that. But when I would get ready to be sexual, everything would tighten, including that part, which was creating the tension that caused the rip. But if someone had told me, before, if someone had told me, for one, like, episiotomies aren't necessary if you massage the area, if someone had said that, or if someone had even asked me, like, no, they didn't even ask. It was just like they had a razor, but there was no question. And had I not had that experience, I may not have ever connected the dots in that relationship.
Wow. There you go. Thankful to the episiotomy.
Right?
Yes. Yes. And our emotions in our vulva are it is like a heightened. It knows things before the rest of us.
Everything.
And if we listen, if we're holding back somewhere in our intimate life, in our lives, our vulvas, our yonis, they know. They are like beacons like lighthouses if we listen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm always saying, like, my pussy knows everything before I do. If someone asks me something, if they happen to identify as a woman, then I'll say, what does your pussy say? Because you don't even need to know what I think. What does your pussy think?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
It's very responsive. Another thing that now I didn't happen to me before, probably in the last 2 years, but when I witness, even if it's in a movie, if I witness something that is emotionally or very physically painful, that is where I register the pain first.
Ah, okay.
That is exactly, like, I'll feel it there first. And I didn't have that until a couple of years ago. The more intimate that I've become, because I was essentially numbed out before that, I didn't tune in or anything. I did not recognize that there was energy there or, and I've always been orgasmic, but not present for the orgasms.
Yes. Yes.
They were happening, but I wasn't there. It was just, it was almost automatic. I was not ever in the room. And so, but in the last several years, the more of my own healing work I've done and the more I've connected and grounded in that and connected with myself in that way, everything shows up there first.
Well, good noticing. Well, good work. Beautiful.
It's not always emotionally pain-free to notice.
No. And it's not always, it doesn't always look pretty to go through those emotional, absolutely. But there is always a beauty in there. There's always an essence of beauty in there.
Yeah, it's kind of like the lotus blossom effect, right? Like,
yeah.
It's like, it's murky and dank and it's probably smelly as hell.
We're back to the jungle again, aren't we?
Right? Look, everything's in the jungle. I'm like picturing like moss growing on trees and, like a whole like floor of all kinds of stuff. Cause there's nothing neat about nature. We've constructed this idea that everything is supposed to be neat. We see people garden in rows and we think that nature looks like that. Nature does not ever look like that. It's not concerning itself with staying on its side. If there's an ivy or a vine, it's not saying like, I can't grow on the side of this tree or I can't completely engulf this tree, because it will if that's what it wants to do. And the tree will allow.
Yes.
The tree will allow it. And so I'm still getting comfortable with allowing and receiving. And one of the words for me, one of the feelings that I intend to embody this year is soft. And a few years ago, you could not have paid me to say that shit. Like, right. I don't want to be soft. What are you talking about? But now I want to be able to be soft and I want to feel safe enough to soften.
Yes. And that the safety is a big key.
Yes.
It's when the body is safe, and different bodies like different safeties, but once we can turn our nervous systems off and we can stop being in fight and flight and we can be in our bodies and we can create safety. And I work with pleasure now, mostly. But when I've noticed with myself, I notice with clients, when there is safety, the body opens itself. Mm-hmm. The body knows what it knows, and it knows it's safe enough to let go of, remove, change, transmute, have a shamanic experience, whatever it needs. Mm-hmm. But it knows. And when it comes from the inside out, it transforms, not for a day or not for a week, but forever. Mm. That metamorphosis has happened instead of, and I love my catharticness. I love being able to do cathartic work. but that forcefulness and that I'm pushing through and I am kind of going to continue and I'm going to keep going, that doesn't create safety in the body.
No, not even a little bit.
No.
There, last year, I think it was last year, my theme for the year was surrender. And I remember having a conversation with one of my girlfriends, and she carries a lot of masculine energy. And when I said that, she was like, no. She was like, no, I'm not here for that. Surrender. She was like, that feels helpless. And I said, that doesn't feel like that to me. But when we don't allow, it's kind of like, when we are in water and every human is capable of floating, and to go from sinking to floating, you do not change your physical body weight. All you have to do is shift your mind to become buoyant. But you have to surrender or you will not float. So that's been a journey for me. And I think that it's a journey for a lot of people when we, for whatever reason, and I've had some trauma in my past also. So like whatever, I've had some trauma that I wouldn't identify as trauma, like just stuff that, that I didn't, if I hadn't had a therapist, I might have never identified it as traumatic because it was just what I knew and it was normal to me. And, but those things created this need to protect and to, constrict, which is why I have this tightness in my pelvis. So, like that story of being independent, comes from that need of defending and protecting and consequently not allowing and certainly not surrendering. And then there's no safety. So everything does feel like a labor,
Yes. I was a presenter at the Wise Women Gathering in Australia a few weeks ago, and I ran a taster yoni mapping class. And first of all, it was a bit hectic because they, for whatever reason, they knew what I was doing, but maybe it didn't they didn't think about what I would require to have safety. And so I had a see-through tent in the middle of the thoroughfare. I said, that's not going to work, really. I need to have something else because there is an opportunity, not everyone, but there is an opportunity for people to do some hands-on practical work. So that will mean they will remove their clothes. So being in the see-through tent is not going to make them feel safe. It's not about in that instance me feeling safe. It's about creating the safety for them. So we went and found something else and created a whole bunch of tarps and made it a nice safe area for the women. And during the process, and so I was doing lots of processes to get them to feel so that their bodies would feel safe. And having those mirror neurons from each other. If the more of us that feel safe, the more of us will feel safe. And I gave people a couple of self-selection times, like where they could, decide this is not for me. I'm heading off. I've heard enough. So I've got and so the people that stayed were really committed and had courage. They were a little bit nervous about what would this look like. Most of them had not ever probably seen another woman's genitals, never alone the opportunity to maybe touch them. That was, there's some steps in there. So as I work through, we work through every single piece with consent and with asking. And because a lot of the time we haven't had somebody ask us, can we touch
Right.
And, or have we ever invited someone? I would like you. Could you touch mine? And so in the process of, giving skills that looks, from the outside looks like I'm just kind of asking, but they're actually developing, somatic skills and new neurological pathways of I can ask and, lots of breathing. So how did that feel? And what are you noticing? And the women, it was palpable, the change that we'd gone from kind of nervous, excited to this sacred heart, loving space. And for both people as they, being honoured enough to be able to touch someone and being honoured enough to receive. Because how often do we receive without any agenda, without anybody wanting something? And in amongst the process, I was listening to a conversation, and I have permission to share. So this woman said, I have very big lips, she said. And I kind of looked over and I said to her, can I, would you like some feedback on that? Would you like some help? I said, you would have some of the tiniest lips I've ever seen.
Really? But her perception was completely different.
Somebody had said to her, you have big lips. And the lady who was, holding space for her, she said, I don't think you have big lips either. I would have said they were tiny. So her perception of her body had the opportunity to change.
Yes.
From I have big lips to, oh, wow, maybe I just have tiny lips. Maybe I said, we don't get to see. And then when somebody, who are these people that tell us these things, that your whatever is whatever? What experience do they have? What do they know? And then, vulvas, they look very different when they're relaxed to when they're aroused.
Yes, they do. Very different. The color is different. The plumpness is different.
Yes.
And they look different pre-childbirth and post-childbirth, because I remember the coloring changing for me after having given birth.
Yes. So I encourage everyone to go home and play and look at the differences and see and get to notice what color are they and how they're big or small, or what happens when, to know at least, know ourselves. And then if you've got some friends that you considered a sacred place with, then men have, I think, often I find women know more about men's anatomy than they do their own anatomy.
Oh, for sure. Well, and so often, like, women aren't encouraged to look. Even in the doctor's office, I still remember the first time I asked for a mirror in the gynecologist's office. I was in my 20s, and she was looking, the speculum's in there, and she's looking, and she says, oh, your cervix looks nice and healthy. And I said, I want to see it. And she had a mirror, and she says, nobody your age has ever asked that. Well, I don't know what nice and healthy looks like. I had at that point only seen, a cervix in a book or on one of those plastic models that they have inside of the doctor's office, but I had never seen a live one, certainly not my own.
Yes.
But, when I've worked with women and I've asked them, like, have you looked? Why would I want to look? Like, I'm like, I look at my pussy every day. I've looked 3 times today, actually, because I was feeling discomfort. So I'm always looking, and I invite, I share space with my daughter and my sister. Everybody in my house has been inside of this pussy. That I'm like, especially there are things I can't see. Even with a mirror, if the light isn't right, like I can't zoom in on anything. So I'm like, can you look? Can you tell me what this is right here? And they're all like... It's like a joke. It's an ongoing joke that my daughter's like, how come everyone has to be in your vagina all the time?
Well, there is a place where our vulva and our yonis are sacred, totally sacred, and I don't want to take that away. The other part is it's a piece of our body, like our elbow or our knee, and you probably wouldn't have any issue if you couldn't see the back of your knee, you wouldn't have any saying to someone, could you have a look here? Right. Could you tell me what's happening? What's going on? I just, and we wouldn't necessarily think that was a sexual thing.
Absolutely.
We would just think they've got something on the back of the knee they can't see.
Exactly. I mean, and even, there are certain parts of yourself that you wouldn't just invite anybody, like you wouldn't just pull someone off the street. So there are degrees of it. But there should be a comfort. And I think that we should all have someone that we trust enough to reveal that part of ourselves to. I mean, even, if you identify as a man, like you should have someone that in a personal setting, of course, because even there are people that never get comfortable at the doctor. They don't know you like that. Most doctors don't have a personal relationship with the patient. But we should all be able to have somebody that we feel safe enough to say, like, can you look at this?
Yeah.
Like in a beautiful, perfect world. In the meantime, there are women like you who are creating safe spaces for women to be able to unfold themselves in that way. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it is beautiful. Like it opens when I looked around the room, and because it had taken a little bit to get there with setting it up and when I looked around the room and my body was just totally expanded. I nearly had a tear in my eye, and then I had to remember that I was facilitating and had to come back to what I was doing. But for a moment, it was just the awe and the sense of this is women being sacred with women. There is something so tangible and juicy and natural. Like it feels like when, I know people hearing this will go, oh, really? You all sat around and you touch each other's genitals. It sounds weird. And it could sound weird. And I've seen video footage on TV and I think, oh, is that what we look like? It does look a bit weird when you're on the outside. When you're in and when you're there and when it's your heart and when it's your body and when you've connected and you're relaxed, there is something so natural about it. There's a natural that takes over.
Absolutely. I am honored to even witness it third party. That is a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. Well, I've got one more question for you.
Okay.
And this one is about you. How do you like to be taken care of after sex? Like, what's your favorite post-coital way to be nurtured?
Well, I like to kind of bring it to a finish slowly. So I don't usually move either person quite as soon as somebody comes. It's not really, probably because, I want to say 400, that's an exaggeration, but I would probably have between, 25 and 50 orgasms. So if I was to stop when I had my first orgasm, it would be very sad. So I like to continue, and often energy is still running through my body, so I still like to be connected. And sometimes I like to just be held, and sometimes lightly touched, and just to allow that expansiveness to go right through my body, and sometimes it's just, sitting or laying in, with grin from ear to ear.
Yes.
With the other person. There's no words. There's just the blissfulness running through each of us. Slow, I suppose. Slow is what I like. It happens, but I don't necessarily like it when, we have, in Australia, we have wombats. And they're a big, furry, hairy creature, and they dig holes and they're out in the wild. And so there's a kind of a saying, if you're like a wombat, you eat root and leave. It happens, but that is not how I like to be. I kind of like that slowness and the continuing, because when does sex finish and when does it start? And does it have to have, what if we were to play in in that sensuality, and it doesn't have to always be intense. And or sometimes it's intense and sometimes it's not intense and sometimes it's subtle and sometimes but playing in that, where am I right now? Exactly what you're talking about with your body, you're being here and enjoying the apple, and where am I in time and space, so that it continues. Yes. Sometimes it's really, really intense and other times it's really subtle. Sometimes we're very close together, sometimes we're far away, but there's that flow of connectedness and flow of sensuality. And that's not to say that I don't like very hard fast either.
Yes.
Just to, I'm not saying, I think the variety.
Yeah.
Is the key.
I am here for all of that. I am here for all of that. Oh, you are just doing amazing work. I am so grateful. Caitlin Grace gave me your name. She's my fave. I enjoy her so much. And I'm so grateful that she did. I'm so grateful that we had a chance to connect. She said, you're going to love her. I already know.
That's because her pussy told her.
Right? Yes, because, pussy knows best, period.
Pussy knows best.
Pussy knows best. True. This is fantastic. So good.
Thank you, Stacey.
The Sensuality Project is produced, edited, and hosted by me. Music by bensound.com. The Sensuality Project podcast is a production of staceyherrera.com.